Mark Consuelos' emotional confession about Kelly Ripa leaves fans deeply moved. Fans of Live with Kelly and Mark were left unexpectedly emotional after Mark Consuelos opened up in a rare, deeply personal moment that revealed just how much his relationship with Kelly Ripa means to him, one that resonated with viewers across the country. During a quiet on-air conversation, Mark's tone noticeably shifted. The laughter faded and his words carried a weight that fans were not used to hearing. He spoke honestly about the pressures of balancing a demanding career, family responsibilities, and a long-lasting marriage in the public eye. For many watching, it felt like a window into a private moment they rarely get to see. Mark admitted that there are days when he worries about whether he's doing enough, not just as a co-host, but as a partner and a father. He shared that Kelly has been his constant source of strength through every high and low, even during moments when the world only sees their smiles. His voice softened as he acknowledged how much he relies on her presence, both on and off camera. Kelly, visibly touched, listened quietly. Rather than interrupting with humor, she allowed the moment to breathe. Viewers later praised her reaction, saying it showed the deep respect and understanding that has defined their relationship for decades. When she finally responded, her words were calm and reassuring, reminding Mark and the audience that no relationship is perfect, but commitment and communication make all the difference. What made the moment especially powerful was its authenticity. There was no dramatic announcement, no shocking revelation, just two people being honest about life, partnership, and emotional growth. Fans flooded social media with messages of support, saying the conversation felt real, relatable, and unexpectedly comforting. Many longtime viewers noted that they've grown up watching Kelly and Mark, first as actors, then as parents, and now as co-hosts, navigating a new chapter together. Seeing them acknowledge challenges instead of glossing over them made their bond feel even stronger. One fan wrote, "It's comforting to know that even people we admire still have moments of doubt and reflection." Behind the scenes, sources close to the show say the conversation wasn't planned. It simply unfolded naturally, making it all the more impactful. Producers chose not to cut or redirect the moment, recognizing that audiences crave honesty more than polished perfection. Mark later reflected on the moment in a follow-up segment, explaining that speaking openly wasn't easy, but it felt necessary. He said that after years in the spotlight, he's learned the importance of slowing down and appreciating the people who truly matter. Life moves fast, he shared, and sometimes you don't realize how much someone means to you until you stop and say it out loud. Kelly echoed those sentiments, adding that growth, both individually and as a couple, comes from facing emotions rather than hiding them behind jokes or routines. She thanked viewers for their overwhelming kindness, saying the support reminded her why their audience feels more like a community than just viewers at home. As clips of the moment continue to circulate online, fans are calling it one of the most heartfelt segments the show has aired in years. It served as a reminder that even in a world filled with headlines and speculation, the most powerful stories are often the quiet, honest ones. For Kelly and Mark, this emotional exchange didn't signal trouble. It highlighted trust, resilience, and a deep connection built over time. And for viewers, it offered something rare, a genuine reminder that love isn't about perfection, but about showing up, listening, and being willing to speak from the heart. As the days passed, the impact of Mark's emotional confession continued to ripple far beyond the studio. Viewers didn't just see it as another television moment. They saw it as a reminder that long-term relationships require effort, patience, and vulnerability, even when everything looks perfect from the outside. Behind the scenes, colleagues reportedly noticed a subtle shift in the energy between Kelly and Mark. Not a distance, but a deeper calm. Crew members described the couple as more intentional, sharing quiet laughs during breaks, checking in with each other between segments, and lingering a little longer once the cameras stopped rolling. It was clear that the on-air moment had strengthened something rather than shaken it. Mark later shared that speaking openly changed how he viewed his role, not just as a host, but as a partner navigating life alongside someone who has been by his side for decades. He admitted that when you've been married as long as they have, it's easy to assume love doesn't need to be said out loud anymore. That realization, he explained, was what made the moment so emotional. Kelly, too, reflected on how rare it is for couples in the public eye to show uncertainty without fear of judgment. She acknowledged that viewers often expect constant happiness, especially from people who make a living entertaining others, but she emphasized that real connection comes from honesty, not performance. Fans responded with overwhelming support. Messages poured in from couples who said the conversation encouraged them to talk more openly with their own partners. Others thanked Kelly and Mark for showing that emotional growth doesn't stop after years together. It evolves. Many called it one of the most meaningful exchanges the show has ever aired. Longtime viewers also pointed out how much the couple has grown since Mark first joined the show. At the beginning, much of their dynamic centered on playful teasing and humor. Now, fans are noticing more depth, conversations about life, family, and emotional awareness that feel mature and grounded. Producers quietly praised the moment as well, saying it reflected exactly what modern audiences connect with: authenticity. In a media landscape filled with noise and speculation, a simple, sincere exchange stood out more than any headline ever could. In the days that followed, Kelly and Mark returned to their usual lighthearted rhythm, but something felt different. The laughter felt warmer, the conversations felt more present. Viewers noticed small gestures, shared glances, thoughtful pauses, gentle reassurance that spoke louder than words. Rather than signaling a problem, the moment revealed strength. It showed a couple unafraid to pause, reflect, and appreciate what they've built together. For many watching, it was a comforting reminder that love isn't defined by perfection, but by willingness to grow together. And as fans continued tuning in each morning, one thing is clear: this emotional confession didn't shake viewers because it was dramatic. It moved them because it was real. As weeks went by, the conversation that once seemed like a quiet, unscripted moment began to take on its own life. What surprised many wasn't just what Mark said, but how openly he allowed himself to be seen. In an industry where confidence is often expected at all times, his honesty stood out as rare and deeply human. Mark later hinted that the confession came from a period of reflection. With life moving quickly and routines becoming second nature, he realized how easy it is to overlook the emotional check-ins that truly matter. He shared that Kelly had sensed this shift long before he voiced it, offering support without pressure, patience without judgment. Kelly, for her part, addressed the moment during a later segment, explaining that long marriages go through quiet phases that don't make headlines but shape people profoundly. She spoke about learning when to speak and when to simply listen, something she said took years to understand. Her words resonated strongly with viewers who saw their own relationships reflected in her experience. Audience reactions continued to grow. Some fans said they felt as though the couple had given them permission to slow down and be honest with themselves. Others said the moment changed how they viewed emotional strength, realizing it doesn't always come with loud declarations, but with calm acceptance. Industry insiders noted that moments like this are becoming increasingly meaningful in daytime television. Rather than sensational stories, viewers are responding more to authenticity and emotional intelligence. Kelly and Mark's exchange became a quiet example of that shift, earning praise for its sincerity. Even off-camera, those close to the couple noticed small but telling changes. Mark reportedly became more intentional about expressing appreciation, while Kelly leaned into moments of reflection rather than brushing past them with humor. These weren't dramatic changes, just gentle adjustments that spoke volumes. As the show continued, there was no attempt to recreate the moment or turn it into a recurring topic. Instead, it remained what it was, a genuine expression that happened once and lingered because it mattered. Viewers appreciated that restraint, seeing it as another sign of respect for both the audience and the emotion behind it. Over time, the story became less about the confession itself and more about what it represented, a reminder that even long-standing partnerships require care, that communication doesn't stop once you've figured things out, and that love can be steady and strong while still allowing room for vulnerability. For many fans, this chapter of Kelly and Mark's journey didn't feel sad, it felt meaningful. It showed growth, awareness, and a quiet commitment to one another that doesn't need grand gestures to be real. And as each episode aired, viewers continued tuning in, not just for the laughs, but for the sense of connection that only comes when people are willing to be honest, even in small moments.
The moment began to settle into something deeper than a single on-air exchange. Viewers didn't just remember what Mark said, they remembered how it made them feel. Many described it as one of those rare television moments that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Mark later shared, in a quieter conversation, that opening up publicly wasn't something he had planned or rehearsed, it simply happened. He explained that sometimes emotions surface when you least expect them to, especially when you're sitting across from the person who has shared your life for so many years. That honesty, he said, was a reflection of trust, not uncertainty. Kelly's response continued to earn admiration. Rather than shifting the moment away or lightening it with humor, she met it with patience. Friends of the couple said that reaction was no surprise. Off-camera, Kelly has always been described as someone who understands the power of listening, especially when words matter most. Fans began revisiting old interviews and episodes, noticing how often the couple spoke about growth, change, and partnership over the years. What once felt like casual remarks now seemed like pieces of a larger story, one about evolving together instead of standing still. Many viewers also appreciated what wasn't said. There were no dramatic claims, no alarming hints, no need for clarification afterward. The moment didn't point to trouble, it pointed to awareness. That distinction mattered, and audiences felt it. Within the television community, the exchange was quietly praised as an example of how authenticity can resonate more strongly than spectacle. In a space where conversations are often fast-paced and surface-level, this pause, this honesty felt refreshing. As Kelly and Mark continued hosting, small details stood out. A shared smile after a segment, a gentle touch on the arm, a moment of eye contact before moving on. None of it was staged, yet all of it felt meaningful. Viewers noticed, not because it was dramatic, but because it felt sincere. The conversation also sparked broader discussions among fans about long-term relationships. Comment sections filled with personal reflections from people who had been married for years, saying the moment reminded them to speak appreciation out loud, to not assume their partner already knows. For Mark, the experience became a reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's acknowledgement. And for Kelly, it reinforced the idea that being present matters just as much as being supportive. Together, they showed that emotional honesty doesn't need a spotlight to be powerful, it simply needs space. What began as a quiet confession slowly became a shared experience between hosts and viewers alike, not because it was shocking, but because it was human. And as the show moved forward, that moment remained, unspoken, unresolved, and perfectly complete, serving as a reminder that sometimes the strongest connections are revealed not through grand gestures, but through a few honest words spoken at the right time. As the conversation slowly faded from headlines, its meaning didn't fade from the hearts of viewers. Instead, it became something quieter and more lasting. People stopped talking about it as a moment and began referring to it as a reminder, one that felt unexpectedly personal. Mark later hinted that the experience changed how he approaches everyday life. He spoke about learning to pause more often, to acknowledge emotions before they pass unnoticed. In a world that constantly pushes forward, he admitted that slowing down felt unfamiliar at first, but necessary. Kelly, he said, had always understood that balance, even when he struggled to articulate it himself. Kelly shared similar reflections, noting that long relationships aren't built on constant excitement, but on awareness. She explained that there are seasons in life where strength looks like action and others where it looks like patience. That understanding, she said, has helped them stay grounded despite years in the public eye. Viewers continued to find meaning in the simplicity of the exchange. There was no dramatic follow-up, no emotional cliffhanger. Instead, the show moved on, just like life does, and that, many fans said, made it even more powerful. It mirrored reality. Moments of clarity don't always come with conclusions. Sometimes they simply change how you move forward. Those close to the couple noticed that Mark became more comfortable speaking from a place of openness, not just humor. Kelly, meanwhile, leaned into quieter moments without rushing past them. Together, they seemed more present, more intentional, qualities that don't demand attention but quietly command respect. The audience responded in kind. Ratings remained steady, but engagement deepened. Messages weren't about shock or concern, they were about gratitude. Viewers thanked them for showing that emotional honesty doesn't need explanation or defense, it just needs to exist. As time went on, the story surrounding the confession softened. It was no longer framed as something heavy or unsettling. Instead, it became a symbol of maturity, trust, and emotional growth. Viewers described it as comforting, a reminder that even stable, loving partnerships require reflection and care. Ultimately, what stayed with people wasn't the sadness implied in the headline, but the sincerity behind the words. The moment didn't reveal a crack, it revealed a foundation strong enough to hold honesty without fear. And as Kelly and Mark continued to sit side by side each morning, sharing laughter, conversation, and quiet understanding, viewers see something deeper than entertainment. They see two people choosing connection, again and again, even in the smallest, most unspoken ways.
The moment quietly reshaped how viewers perceived everyday conversations on the show. What once felt like routine exchanges now carried a bit more weight, as if audiences were listening more closely, not just to the jokes, but to the pauses between them. Mark began speaking more thoughtfully about gratitude. He mentioned, without fanfare, how easy it is to overlook the constant support that exists behind the scenes. These weren't dramatic speeches, just brief acknowledgments woven naturally into conversation. Yet viewers noticed. They felt intentional. Kelly, too, appeared more reflective. She spoke about balance, not as a concept, but as a practice learned over time. She described how long partnerships evolve, how people grow individually while still moving forward together. Her words felt less like advice and more like shared understanding. Fans continued to respond with warmth. Many said the story encouraged them to reconnect with loved ones, to say things they'd been holding back simply because they assumed they didn't need to be said. Some wrote that the moment reminded them to be gentler with others and with themselves. What stood out most was the absence of spectacle. There were no dramatic follow-ups, no attempts to capitalize on the emotion. The show remained what it has always been, familiar, welcoming, grounded. And that consistency reassured viewers that the moment had been genuine, not manufactured. Behind the scenes, those close to the production described a renewed sense of appreciation. The atmosphere felt calmer, more focused. The confession hadn't disrupted anything. It had quietly reinforced why the show works: trust, respect, and real connection. As time passed, the story became less about Mark's words and more about the shared experience between hosts and audience. It reminded people that emotional honesty doesn't require perfect timing or perfect phrasing, it simply requires courage. Kelly and Mark never returned to the moment directly, but they didn't need to. It lived on in subtle ways, in the ease of their conversations, in the comfort of their silences, and in the understanding that comes from years of shared life. For viewers, that was enough. The story didn't need a dramatic ending because it wasn't about an ending at all. It was about continuity, choosing presence, choosing communication, choosing each other, day after day. And as each new episode aired, the feeling remained the same. This wasn't a story about sadness. It was a story about depth, reflection, and the quiet strength found in speaking from the heart. As the season moved forward, that quiet moment became part of the show's unspoken history. It wasn't replayed endlessly or referenced directly, yet it subtly influenced how many people watched Kelly and Mark each morning. Viewers felt more connected, as though they weren't just watching hosts, but witnessing two people sharing real life in real time. Mark seemed more grounded in the weeks that followed. His humor remained, but there was a noticeable calm beneath it, a sense of reassurance that comes from feeling understood. He spoke occasionally about appreciation, about recognizing small moments instead of waiting for big milestones to say what matters. These comments were brief, almost casual, but they carried meaning. Kelly's presence felt equally steady. She balanced warmth and thoughtfulness in a way that longtime fans recognized as growth. Rather than filling every pause, she allowed space for reflection, for sincerity, for moments that didn't need to be rushed. Many viewers said this made the show feel more intimate and comforting. Audience feedback continued to reflect that shift. Messages described the show as feeling more human and more real. People shared stories of conversations they had with their own partners after watching, saying the moment reminded them that connection doesn't fade, it just needs attention. What made the story endure was its simplicity. There was no single quote that defined it, no dramatic takeaway. Instead, it lived in tone and feeling. It reminded viewers that even strong relationships require acknowledgement, and that vulnerability can exist quietly without changing everything around it. Industry observers noted that moments like this are rare because they can't be scripted. They happen only when trust is already present. That trust between Kelly and Mark, and between the hosts and their audience, was what gave the exchange its lasting impact. As time passed, the story softened even more. It stopped being viewed as an emotional confession and became a symbol of awareness, a reminder that long journeys aren't marked only by turning points, but by pauses where people choose to reflect instead of rushing ahead. Kelly and Mark continued their work as they had always done, laughing, debating, sharing stories. Yet beneath it all was a sense of intention. They weren't just moving through the routine, they were present in it. And for viewers, that presence mattered. It turned an ordinary broadcast into something quietly meaningful, not because anything changed dramatically, but because something was acknowledged honestly. In the end, this chapter wasn't about uncertainty or worry. It was about recognition, about understanding the value of saying what you feel while you still have the chance, and about the quiet strength that comes from being open even when no one is asking you to be.